The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the quiet streets of the neighborhood. Marcus Williams walked home after a long day, the cool evening air a welcome relief from the heat of the city. His footsteps were steady, rhythmic against the cracked pavement. The familiar sights, the old corner store, the faded stop sign, the children playing in yards, offered a sense of peace. He thought about dinner waiting for him, his mother's voice calling from the porch, the comfort of home. For Marcus, this walk was a moment of calm, a brief escape from the world's noise. But that calm was about to be shattered. A police cruiser slowed behind him, lights off but presence undeniable. A white officer stepped out, eyes fixed with suspicion. Without warning, Marcus was stopped. Questions came sharp and cold. ID now. The peaceful evening twisted into a confrontation. And Marcus knew this was more than a routine check. It was a test of patience, dignity, and courage. The officer's gaze didn't waver as he approached Marcus. "Where you headed?" he demanded. Marcus kept his voice calm, answering honestly. "Home. Just finished work." The officer stepped closer, blocking his path. "ID now." Marcus reached into his pocket, producing his license. The officer inspected it, but didn't return it. Instead, he launched into questions, asking about Marcus's job, where he lived, why he was walking alone. The tone was accusatory, the words laced with suspicion. Marcus noticed passers-by slowing down, watching the interaction. A few whispered, "What's going on?" But the officer paid them no mind. His focus was singular. Marcus stayed composed, repeating his answers with measured patience. But inside, the tension mounted. He understood the unspoken assumption that his presence here was a threat, and that the officer's suspicion was rooted in something deeper than the questions. He hoped the encounter would end soon, but it wouldn't. Not yet. The officer's tone grew sharper. "Why are you really out here?" he pressed. Marcus remained calm, but firm. "I live here. I'm just walking home." The officer scoffed. "You sure about that?" Nearby, a few neighbors began to gather, sensing the tension. One woman whispered to another, "He hasn't done anything wrong." But the officer ignored them, his eyes narrowing. Marcus reached for his phone, intending to record, but the officer's warning stopped him. "No filming." The man took a slow breath, lowering his hand. "I'm not looking for trouble," Marcus said. "But this feels like trouble looking for me." The officer's response was a sneer. "Just stay put until I finish." More officers arrived, their presence increasing the pressure. Marcus's heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. He called his father, a man trained for war, a man who understood threats differently, because this was not just harassment. This was a moment where strength and history would collide. Within minutes, Marcus's father, James Williams, arrived at the scene. Tall, with a commanding presence shaped by years of military service, James exuded calm authority. The officers hesitated as he approached, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. James spoke firmly but without anger. "Is there a problem here?" The officer who had detained Marcus glanced nervously but kept his posture rigid. James turned to Marcus. "Son, let's handle this peacefully." Then, facing the officers, he continued, "My son has done nothing wrong. He's a responsible man and a member of this community. His military training was evident in every measured word and deliberate movement." The crowd watching began to murmur, some stepping forward with phones raised. The tension that had gripped the street began to ease. The officers, confronted with James's presence and reputation, started to back down. Realization dawned. They were dealing with a man who had been trained for war. Respect replaced suspicion, and the harassment that had started so harshly now began to unravel. As the officers stepped back, the crowd's murmurs swelled into applause. Neighbors who had watched in silence now voiced their support aloud. The lead officer, face flushed with embarrassment, stammered an apology. James accepted it calmly, but his eyes conveyed a stern warning. "This isn't just about my son," he said. "It's about respect, respect that every person deserves." Marcus, still shaken, nodded in agreement. The officers retreated to their vehicles, the weight of the moment settling over them. Onlookers shared videos and stories across social media, spreading the encounter far beyond the neighborhood. The incident ignited conversations citywide about racial profiling and police conduct. Local leaders called for investigations and reforms. Community members organized forums to discuss systemic issues. James and Marcus spoke openly, emphasizing dignity, restraint, and the need for change. Their story became a powerful reminder that courage and calm could defuse even the tensest situations, and that sometimes the presence of one trained for war could bring peace to a neighborhood's streets. The police department quickly launched an internal investigation. Officers involved were placed on administrative leave pending review. The community watched closely, demanding transparency and accountability. James and Marcus met with city officials, sharing their experience firsthand. They stressed the importance of training officers to recognize bias and de-escalate conflicts. Local activists seized the moment, organizing workshops on community policing and racial justice. Neighborhoods rallied together, hosting peaceful marches and educational events. Media coverage amplified the story, shining a spotlight on systemic issues within law enforcement. Interviews with the Williams family resonated nationwide, highlighting the human cost of prejudice. Despite the challenges, their message was one of hope, that through dialogue and understanding, change was possible, and that respect must be the foundation of every interaction, on the street, in the home, and beyond. As public pressure mounted, the police department introduced mandatory bias training for all officers. Community advisory boards were empowered to review misconduct allegations. James Williams volunteered to speak at training sessions, sharing his military perspective on discipline and respect. He emphasized the importance of seeing people as individuals, not stereotypes. Marcus continued his life with renewed purpose, channeling his experience into activism. He spoke at schools, urging youth to understand their rights and the power of calm assertiveness. Together, father and son became pillars of their community's fight for justice. Their story inspired others to stand up against harassment and discrimination. Small changes began to ripple through the city's policing culture. More officers approached their duties with empathy and care, and neighborhoods started to feel safer, not just from crime, but from fear itself. The Williams family's journey was a testament to the strength found in unity, and to the power of one family's courage to ignite lasting change. With their growing influence, James and Marcus partnered with local organizations to launch community forums. These gatherings brought together police officers, residents, activists, and city officials to foster open dialogue. They addressed difficult questions about race, privilege, and justice. Workshops focused on building trust and improving communication between law enforcement and communities of color. The forums created a space for healing, learning, and mutual understanding. James often shared stories from his military service, drawing parallels between discipline and respect. Marcus highlighted the everyday realities of racial bias. The community began to see progress. Neighborhood watch programs collaborated more closely with police. Recruitment efforts sought to diversify the force. Youth mentorship programs flourished. The Williams family's commitment to change inspired a citywide movement, one rooted in empathy, accountability, and hope. Their journey was far from over, but every step forward was a victory. The media spotlight on the Williams family intensified. Local news stations aired interviews with James and Marcus, humanizing a story too often told in statistics. National outlets picked up the narrative, framing it as a symbol of resilience and community power. The father-son duo became sought-after speakers at conferences and panels focused on police reform and racial justice. They emphasized the importance of personal stories in driving systemic change. Their approach was grounded in patience and education rather than anger. They advocated for policies that addressed root causes, including poverty, education disparities, and implicit bias. Community members praised their leadership, seeing in them a beacon of hope. But the Williams knew the road ahead was long and fraught with challenges. Still, their resolve remained unshaken. Together, they had turned a moment of harassment into a movement for justice. And that was just the beginning. As the movement gained momentum, tangible reforms began to take shape. The police department adopted new protocols for traffic stops, emphasizing respect and de-escalation. Community members were included in oversight committees to ensure accountability. Training programs incorporated voices like James's, blending military discipline with community sensitivity. Marcus worked closely with youth organizations, mentoring young men navigating their own encounters with law enforcement. He encouraged calm confidence, knowing firsthand the power of presence. The city saw a decrease in complaints against officers, and an increase in community trust. But the Williams family understood that change required constant vigilance. They continued to speak out, challenge policies, and support those impacted by bias. Their story was a reminder that courage, when combined with persistence, can transform even the deepest wounds. And as they looked ahead, James and Marcus remained committed to building a safer, fairer future for themselves and generations to come. In the courtroom and the streets, Marcus continued to embody resilience. He became an advocate for those without a voice. His calm demeanor and unwavering resolve inspired others to stand firm against injustice. James's military background lent credibility and strength to their message. Together, they participated in community panels, legal workshops, and police training sessions. Their story was featured in documentaries highlighting systemic racism and the path toward reform. Yet, despite the attention, they remained grounded. They understood that true change was measured in daily actions and sustained effort. Marcus often reflected on the moment his father arrived that evening. How calm authority had defused a potentially volatile encounter. It was a lesson in strength tempered by wisdom, and one they hoped to pass on. Because every moment of courage builds toward a future where no one is harassed for the color of their skin, where dignity is the right of all, and where respect is the foundation of every interaction. Community leaders recognized the impact of the Williams family's advocacy. They worked together to create scholarship programs for young Black men and women aspiring to careers in law enforcement and public service. Workshops on cultural competence became a staple in police training academies. Neighborhoods saw increased cooperation between residents and officers, fostering safer environments. Marcus volunteered as a mentor, encouraging youth to pursue their dreams with confidence and integrity. James continued to share his military experiences, emphasizing discipline, respect, and accountability. Their combined efforts transformed fear into understanding, distrust into dialogue, and tension into teamwork. The city began to heal, piece by piece. A healing rooted in truth, courage, and community. Their story was no longer just about a moment of harassment. It was about a movement of resilience and hope, one that would continue to inspire for generations. The Williams family's journey wasn't without setbacks. Resistance from some corners remained. Old attitudes lingered like shadows, threatening progress. But James and Marcus faced these challenges with patience and determination. They engaged skeptics with empathy, inviting dialogue rather than confrontation. Their approach won over many hearts and minds. At public forums, Marcus shared stories of everyday encounters, both the painful and the hopeful. James spoke about leadership rooted in respect and experience. Together, they emphasized the importance of community in shaping justice. Their advocacy helped shift perceptions and policies alike. They reminded the city that change is possible when courage meets compassion, and that healing begins when we see one another fully, as neighbors, as brothers, as human beings. Their legacy was growing, and with it, the promise of a brighter, more just tomorrow. As the years passed, the Williams family remained pillars of their community. Their story became a cornerstone for local education programs. Schools incorporated lessons on racial bias, justice, and civic responsibility inspired by their experience. Police departments adopted restorative justice practices, fostering healing between officers and residents. Marcus and James continued mentoring, guiding the next generation of leaders. Their influence extended beyond their city, reaching national platforms and inspiring similar movements. Despite the progress, they remained vigilant, aware that justice is not a destination but a continual journey. They encouraged others to keep pushing forward, speaking out, and standing together. Their legacy was one of resilience and unwavering hope, a testament to the power of courage in the face of adversity, and a reminder that every act of kindness and understanding can build a better world. On a warm evening, the neighborhood gathered for a community celebration. James and Marcus stood side by side, honored for their leadership and courage. Children played nearby, their laughter a soundtrack of renewal. Speeches were given, stories shared, and bonds strengthened. The legacy of that tense night, when suspicion met strength, was no longer a burden but a beacon, a symbol of transformation. As the sun set, Marcus looked at his father. A silent understanding passed between them. Their journey had been difficult, but it had forged something unbreakable: hope, unity, and a promise for future generations.